watching Numbskull Music, and today I'm going to talk about Pantera again. The new Pantera. And a possible new album. The questions are being asked, but is it going to happen? Now, according to Zakk Wylde, he's very open to creating some new music, but he feels you would have to call it something else. You know, it couldn't be Pantera. And I respect that a lot from Zakk. As a guy who was a friend of Vinny and of Dime, you know, he doesn't feel right calling this shit Pantera if they were to write new music. However, he did have a question as far as finishing old music. You know, old songs that never made the original Pantera albums, or finishing out demos that Dime and Vinny had worked on. What would that be? Well, we'll come back to that momentarily, but it's an interesting question. But overall, it sounds to me that Zakk is like halfway in. He's not fully in, but halfway in. And then there's Charlie Benante, and he feels that it sounds so like something to be that he would be excited about. He actually he has riffs. He said he already has them, but that's putting the cart before the horse. That his big concern is how would the fans accept this new Pantera, this newly formed Pantera, doing a new album with new original music. That's the thing he's unsure about. Now, as a Pantera fan, a guy who grew up in the DFW area, Pantera being our hometown heroes, how do I feel about that? I don't want to see this new fake Pantera, and I say fake Pantera because that's kind of what it is. Because the Abbott brothers wouldn't have been cool with this thing being Pantera without one of them, or especially both of them. You could tell a lot of the Vinnie Paul interviews after his brother passed. No, you know, in his words, you know, you see a reunion and it only has like one original member floating around in it. That's not a reunion. That's not the band that you know and you grew up with or whatever. So he always disregarded that kind of shit. So I kind of disregard this. And look, I understand why they're using the name Pantera because the money is in the name. They could have used Superjoint. They could have used Down. But there's no money in Superjoint. There's no money in Down. The money is in Pantera. Drawing these huge crowds. And this, you know, like it or not, it doesn't matter whether I like it or not. This has been an enormous and successful tour. It's built up steam, gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why people in the music journalism landscape are asking questions of guys like Zakk and Charlie. And I'm sure Phil and Rex are probably going to be asked the same thing. Are we going to get new music? Because once you have had this kind of success with a tour, people generally expect some new music. Like there's some hunger for it. Now, in my opinion, Phil would be hugely on board with this. This has been his wet dream forever since he essentially broke up the band before. And I know people have, you know, asked the question, did Phil really, is he solely responsible? No one's ever solely responsible for breaking up a band. It's about as close as it can get. There were issues, and I'm sure both Vinny and Dime would have easily have said, hey, you know, we didn't do some things right, sure. But even back then, they were making phone calls, they were doing everything they could, reaching out to Phil, trying to put this thing back together, trying to save Pantera back then, and he basically kicked them both in the balls. And they were like, okay, then we're out. And after Dime died, Vinny, and we all know, had no interest in any kind of Pantera reunion without his brother. Now, also he had said multiple times that if Dime had not passed away and it was those two brothers were still around, he's like, of course we could have put Pantera back together, another tour, maybe another album. But the way it ended up, that was never going to happen. And well, of course, now we have this kind of an abomination. I mean, it's not that big a deal, I suppose, unless you're just a huge fan. And I know there's been a lot of, people in my comments, not a lot, but a few people in my comments that have said that, look, this is for the kids, man. There's a lot of people that, never got a chance to see the original band, never got the chance to hear this music live, and now they're getting a chance to hear it live. Well, Pantera did put out a live album. I understand it's not the same of going to a show yourself. But if they put out a new album with new material, is that for the kids? No. Is that for the younger generations that never got to see? No, because the younger generations can go on Spotify or any other platform and listen to all the old Pantera stuff. They don't need the new stuff to know Pantera. Now, would I be interested in hearing what Phil, what Rex, what Charlie, and what Zach can do together as far as original material? Yes. Yes, I have tremendous respect for all those guys as musicians. I absolutely would love to hear what they put out as a supergroup. But as Zach said, you'd have to call that shit something else. Whether it's Down, whether it's Superjoint, whether it's, whatever. But it's, as Pantera, Charlie alluded to it as well. That's kind of a problem. What would fans think? Well, I wouldn't want to hear that shit labeled Pantera. And I know it's just a label. But using that label is about money. And that's it. And that cheapens any kind of real creative and cool thing that you can write and do, whatever awesome riffs there may or may not be. So I have a problem with that. Now, I have thought long and hard. I have thought long and hard about what if they come together and finish out some old riffs, some old demos, some, recordings that are rough, things that Dime and Vinny wrote that never got built upon, that never got finished. Would it be cool to see Phil and Rex, along with Zach and Charlie, finish those songs out and publish them as Pantera? Would that be cool? I actually think it would be. Just to give some middle ground, because I'm very much against all this shit, but actually, I think, because the spirit of Vinny and Dime is kind of still in that stuff that they helped write and create. Would I like to hear that finished out? Because I think Zach does a pretty good Dime impression. I think Charlie does a good job doing Vinny's parts. So I think they could come together and they could finish out those songs. Could you call it Pantera? I think you would. And I think I would accept that as, okay, this is actually new Pantera stuff coming out. The brothers are dead, but their friends came together with Phil and Rex and finished that out. The only reason you would do that really is for the money, but I don't know. I think as far as where Charlie Benente's heart and Zach Wilde's heart is, I think it's a little more from a pure place, from a fan and friendship perspective. And I think that would be cool. I think as a fan, I would enjoy hearing that. And I would accept it as labeled Pantera. But the tricky thing is any kind of original stuff that Zach and Charlie write, because they still have their own styles. They're not just clones of Vinny and Dime. They do their own thing. They have their own way of writing. Those songs would sound different with Phil and Rex. It just freaking would. It would just sound different. There would be some homages in the drumming to Vinny. There would be some homages to Dimebag in the soloing and the riffing, of course. But it's still those two, and they have their own style. They have their own way of playing. So what would it be? What would it sound like? It might sound pretty damn cool. I might enjoy it. I just wouldn't enjoy it with a Pantera label. That's all. So, do I think And finally, do I think the album's going to happen? Because there's a lot of speculation. I actually think, if nothing else, they're going to finish out. They're going to find some old riffs and old songs, kind of like what the Beatles just did with the recordings of old Dead members. You know, they created another single. Yeah, they could do something like that, or you know, when Nirvana, years after Kurt died, they found a B-side, or a couple of B-sides, and one of them happened to be a hit. And, you know, I don't know if there was any remastering or any more playing put on that, or just they just put it out as it was. I'm not sure. So some precedent has already been set, and that's always a cool thing when they can bring out something new from an old band that you never thought would happen again. So something like that would be cool. And I do think that at least that'll happen. But I think they'll try to use that as a gateway to get in some original material, which would suck. I mean, the songs might be great, but I just don't want to hear them under the Pantera label. I think Zach is exactly right. You would have to call it something else. It just doesn't make sense to call it Pantera when there's no Dime and there's no Vinny to write any of it. Then it's not Pantera. You know, and Vinny and Dime were exactly right, because they had all the rights to Pantera. They didn't have to do Damage Plan. They could have just replaced Phil with somebody else, with the Damage Plan singer. He was pretty good. He wasn't Phil. I mean, Phil, I think, is the greatest of all time as far as metal vocalists go. But they had a good one. They could have just replaced him and kept on trucking with Pantera. But the shit wouldn't have been Pantera. Not without Phil. You know, those three guys are just irreplaceable. I love Rex, but, you know, he was good for what they did, a good glue guy, but was he a standout bassist? Was he a Cliff Burton type? Not really. Not really, you know. So sometimes, I hate to say he's the one replaceable guy. Kind of. He's like a Kurt Hammett, you know. Hey, I don't want the drama. You know, y'all work y'all shit out. I'll just be over here fiddling on my shit till y'all are ready to record something. And that's kind of what he strikes me as. I don't think he was never in any of the heat. So, and he was still able to talk to both sides of the camp. So he's kind of a glue guy. But especially those three were just irreplaceable in Pantera. And without any of them, Phil, Dime, or Vinny, then it's not Pantera. And that's kind of where I'm at with any kind of new songs, absolutely new music, is that shit ain't Pantera, and you should never call it Pantera. It might be good, but call it something else. Call it Superjoint, call it Down, call it whatever you want. But it's not Pantera. Anyway, that's all I got for this crap. I'll be back with some more crap later. Bye.